Just talk with me a little longer. Let's talk about the long walk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we're going to be discussing or debating The Long Walk. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is. Movie recommendation time. I'll quickly recommend an anime for you guys in case you haven't seen Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm sure most people have seen it, so that's why they really recommend it. However, if you haven't seen it and you're kind of like on the fence about it, I will definitely say jump off that fence and go watch it. Because for me, so far, it's top 3 animes of all time. It's freaking amazing. But that's not what I'm going to recommend. What I'm going to recommend is 2 series. One, The Girlfriend on Amazon, and 2, Beauty in the Black Season 2. These 2 are just, I think Beauty in the Black Season 2, if you guys don't know what Season 1 is about, it's literally a girl who's not kidnapped, but she gets herself into trouble with the police, and then the police officer who kind of like gets them out of trouble becomes kind of like their pimp, where he's now blackmailing them to be like strippers and prostitutes, etc., etc. And then she ends up mixing in with a powerful guy. They end up like, forming a relationship, not a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, but like a close relationship where it's kind of like a weird type of friendship, and then it just leads to a whole shitstorm because that person is related to one of her tormentors, and then there's just a bunch of, you know what I'm saying. So it's season 2 is pretty much an elevation of that, is a continuation of that, and she ends up gaining power by becoming her friend's wife, because he's dying, but he doesn't want to give his fortune to his family. So yeah, and so it's just madness. But this is junk. And most people, when I say junk, I mean as in like it's like junk food. Most people are not gonna like this. I wouldn't say most people are not gonna like this because the acting is not that great and it's just freaking crazy. However, it's just that type of series where you don't know why you're just addicted to it. Because I think I binged like 6 episodes of one day. I was like, whoa, what the flip is going on? I don't know. Tyler Perry just has that effect. I like a lot of Tyler Perry movies, to be fair. So I'm not even gonna say a lot of Tyler Perry movies are trash. However, he does have some of his stuff are, they're not that great. Let's just call it junk food, you know what I'm saying? But you're just addicted to it. So I don't know. There's just something about his stories that get you glued on, you know what I'm saying? Glued into it. So I don't know. But I definitely recommend that one. And The Girlfriend, I think that's what it's called. That's a new Amazon series, which is pretty good so far. Literally, guys got a new girlfriend, introduced to the mom. The mom doesn't like the girlfriend. And then the girlfriend really, she's kind of crazy. But obviously, the mom's trying to prove. It turns into the mom trying to prove, I think the mom's going to try to prove to the son that she is crazy and that she should stay away from him. Because I think I'm on like episode 2 or something, but that's pretty much the storyline. The mama's boy and a crazy girlfriend fighting for the son's love. It kind of, in a way. But yeah, that's pretty much the things which I watched last week.
Yeah, I think I have something similarly lowbrow, which is Downton Abbey.
Mm.
Now, I'd heard a lot of things about Downton Abbey, but I'd never quite gotten into it because it kind of seemed like a history light soap opera. But like just on a whim, I just started watching it because I figured, well, it's so popular, it's so well known, I should at least have seen an episode. And by the end of the week, I was done with the 5 seasons. It is very much a history light soap opera, but it's a really good one. And I think it has enough in it to kind of keep my attention, even though I do not care for the relationship stuff and the marriages and all of that. Right? I don't care about that. What is much more interesting is kind of the basic story of it. Kind of follows this aristocratic family throughout the 1910s and 20s through World War One and the transition of Britain into kind of modernity. And a big plot point is kind of all the technological changes. Like there's an episode where they get a telephone, for example, right? Like it's that kind of thing, right? And it deals with kind of the fall of the aristocracy from the point of view of the aristocrats. The story is kind of split between the upstairs people, so the aristocratic family and all the different lords and ladies and all of that, and then the downstairs people, which is the staff. It's kind of split 50-50 between those. The upside of the show is basically that it's kind of got pretty mediocre writing that is elevated by some amazing performances. Like they really lucked out with some of the actors that they cast who really elevate middling dialogue. Also, it deals with a whole bunch, like there's a bunch of interesting episodes where they deal with kind of historical topics, right? Like World War One and an independent Ireland, and they realize that their estate is losing money, and now they're looking for ways to generate an income, but working for your income is something that goes against their identity, and now they have to amend it, and different characters have different ideas of where to draw the line, how much to modernize, how much to preserve tradition, and how, and all of that, right? On the downside, it kind of speed runs a lot of the historical events, where it kind of rushes through a whole bunch of events that by themselves could be an entire show. And they kind of downplay kind of the attitudes of the time, where especially prejudices are just there if they serve the plot but not otherwise. They also kind of like the degree to which the upstairs people and the downstairs people interact with each other is also really sugar coated, where they are much more familiar than they should be, and they talk much more openly than they should. And the show sometimes remembers that this is an issue, and then they make an episode about that. And the next episode, they again are really friendly and all of and really, really personal and all of that, right? So it is not high art. It is not an amazing story. It's just a good watch, and it's an enjoyable watch. And for that reason, I would recommend it. Don't watch it if you want a hard-hitting historical drama. Watch it if you want like an enjoyable character-focused drama in a mostly historical setting.
Well,
That's kind of my glowing review.
Cool. It's time for the main event, The Long Walk. Danny G, please give us your famous synopsises.
So, The Long Walk is a dystopian survival movie about an alternate United States that experienced a civil war at some point in the past and is experiencing extreme poverty and stagnation, and has apparently for a long time. And one of the things that the government uses to kind of inspire the people is the Long Walk, which is an annual event at which one young man from each state participates. And the idea is basically that they start walking, and anybody who falls below 3 miles per hour gets a warning. If you get 3 warnings, you get shot. If you try to run away, you get shot. If you break any of the rules, if you try to back out, if you do anything that's against the rules, you get shot. And the story basically follows a bunch of characters who have volunteered. So these are all volunteers. So they have volunteered for this long walk, and the last person who is alive at the end will get essentially infinite riches and will get a wish granted to them by the dictator. And different characters have different reasons for signing up for this and different ideas of what they will do with the reward. And the story essentially starts with the beginning of the long walk, and it ends with the end of the long walk. In between, we get to know these characters, and we see them struggle and fail and die until only one is left. So what did we think of the long walk?
Nice concept and nice watch. It wasn't great. Let me just start off by saying that wasn't great. And I feel like a lot of Stephen King books, a lot of the time, aren't great. However, I'll definitely say this was definitely one of the best ones that I've seen. Actually, there was another Stephen King book which was pretty good. It was like a horror-ish.
We watched The Mist last year.
Oh no, that was good as well. But I forgot. I didn't even know that was a Stephen King's adaptation.
That was Stephen King, yeah.
Okay, cool, crap. But that wasn't what I was referring to. But that Mist is probably number one. There was another one which I forgot what it was called. I read the script to it, but I'll probably come up later. But I'll definitely say The Long Walk is definitely is up there. Now, like I said, it wasn't amazing. There were definitely shaky moments. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. There were certain events that happened which it just didn't feel cohesive, is what I'm trying to say. It just felt like it was added to add the entertainment value to things. And if you think about it, it just didn't really make sense on why it happened. But besides that, I enjoyed what I watched. I felt, like I said, I liked the concept, and I liked how there wasn't a lot of fillers. So, because I was thinking to myself, if this is just going to be a story, if what we're just going to see is them walking in a straight line, I wonder how they're going to kind of tackle the issue, which is, the audience getting bored. Because this technically in a way feels like a one location type of film, even though it's not in one location. And a lot of the times the one location films are hard to execute because there's not a lot going on. And you know how people are, especially with this generation, is, you know what I'm saying, their mind, their attention span is alarming. Let's just say that. So that's one of the main questions I had going into this film, and I think they did quite well. I just enjoyed how how the way that they tackled it was by going through different stories and obviously a gradual build of relationships forming. That was like the gist of the film. Well, the gist of the film is the cash prize, obviously the long walk, but the whole just seeing different people's stories and seeing how they connect through those stories and just how they connect in general. That's kind of like, that is the film, if that makes sense. So I enjoyed watching that rather than the consequences of certain people's actions, because that's what didn't really feel like it really needed to be. No, it did need to be there. And it does make sense because obviously gradually you're going to see people break down. It's just the way that certain people break down. It's like, that was kind of foolish. But overall, like I said, I had a nice time. I liked it.
I kind of dreaded this one because it looked like it was going to be a heavy watch. And I was right. It was a very depressing, gripping story. And I was mesmerized from beginning to end. And so was everybody else in my theater. I think it's extremely effective at what it wants to do, because what it wants to do is create empathy for these characters. By itself, it's a pretty absurd story, but this whole thing lives and dies by its characters, by their motivations, by what they do and how they do it. And I think this just succeeds on that level. So I've not read the book. I imagine you haven't either. Just taking this as a story by itself, this movie is extremely effective at making us care about these people, even though they volunteered to a suicidal blood sport, right? Even the characters that were unlikable, that were completely obnoxious, still I cared about them because they sold me on the desperation and at the bleakness of their world. And so I kind of understood why they did what they did. And I was on board with it. And I felt for them every time we heard that warning call and then the shot. And some of the deaths we see up close, and some of them we kind of see in the background. And each one of them is visceral, and each one of them is hard hitting. And it never gets old. It never gets, like, one thing, like, I did find it a little bit hard to believe that they would literally walk for 5 days. They would walk like 300 miles, something like that, 350. When I walked into, came into this, I figured surely they would walk for 12 hours and then sleep and then start again the next morning. No, they walk the entire time. And that is something that pushes my suspension of disbelief a little bit. But outside of that, I believed all of it. So for me, it was extremely effective, just well done. I like it when a movie has a simple idea and it does that well. And this movie did exactly that. So let's talk about it.
Okay. So, first question. How well do you think the film managed to convey the feeling of psychological torment and endurance? Because it is the long walk. It makes sense in terms of what we were seeing on screen, in terms of how they were breaking down. That was one of my first points as well. One of the things I really enjoyed was how they were breaking down. Now, in terms of the way that some of them reacted to them breaking down, like, for example, even though the long walk didn't break the first death, wait, was the first death? It was the kid that ended up lashing out on one of the people that was one of the contestants that was roasting him, making fun on, making jokes about his mom. That death felt kind of stupid. However, besides that, yeah, so it's just kind of go back to my question. How well do you feel like they managed to convey that?
So there were a few contestants where I had a hard time believing that they would sign up. Specifically, the journalist who wants to write a book about it. It's like you're signing up for something that has a 98% chance of killing you, and you want to do it just for your career. Surely there are other ways to write about the Long March. I don't imagine it would be illegal to kind of just follow along and observe, right? Nobody does it, but surely that would be possible. So that was the one thing where I said, no, I do not believe this. I do not believe you. I don't think anybody would do this. Like, it is outright suicide to volunteer for this, right? And they go into that a little bit. It's like because everybody volunteers, because there's so much prestige associated with it that nobody thinks they will actually get picked, and most people don't. It's like a 0.01% chance that you will get picked if you apply, right? So nobody who volunteered actually thought they would have to do it. But this journalist did exactly that, right? Like he signed up for the explicit purpose of surviving this thing and then being given infinite riches and then writing a book about it. That is the one part where I said, no, I don't believe you. Everybody else, like I believed like the 16-year-old who lied about his age to get in. I imagine he's got like a sick parent or something like that. Or, there's some reason for why he lied on his application. Everybody else has like a decent reason, or I believe that like from context clues and from dialogue, I get the sense that they all had no real choice. This was written during the Vietnam War. And so there's a lot of people have said things about what this is allegorical for. And I don't really think it's allegorical for the Vietnam War. We can talk about that, but I think it's more about life in general. This idea that sometimes you are so desperate and you have so few hopes that you will just take that 1% chance. And if it works out for you, it's great. And if it kills you, like the 99% where you died trying to pursue this goal, you weren't going to lose anything anyway. I believe that many people are in that position and like do stuff like this in real life, where they go all out on one thing that will probably kill them or probably be really bad for them. But if it works out, they've got it made. This basic psychology of it is absolutely something that works for me. And then they paint a pretty convincing picture that this is a world that is so stagnated and so impoverished and so bleak and so hopeless that doing this is the only way. These boys have a good reason to think that this is their only way up.
Were you surprised that everyone, well, most of them were all friendly? Obviously, based on their circumstances, you would have thought that they were going to kind of be standoffish and then gradually build towards a friendship. I say that because I think, like, me thinking if I was ever in a competition like that, my approach would not be to be friendly at all, because it could potentially end up resulting to my demise due to what happened at the end. Like, obviously, with what you saw happen at the end was due to forming a relationship and a bond with someone that wasn't even supposed to be your teammate. It was supposed to be your competitor. So kind of like the transformation, which was pretty interesting. I liked it. It switched from competitor. Well, it didn't switch because it kind of started off as strangers, and I thought it was going to go to them being competitive to them forming a bond, but it kind of felt like they skipped the competitor stage and went straight to forming a bond, which was interesting. I liked it, and I got why. However, just based on the circumstance, you would have thought they would have been a bit standoffish to each other.
Yeah, I'm of several minds on this. So on the one hand, no, I agree that like this is life or death. And are you not focused on yourself? They are in competition, but like they're not fighting each other. They're just walking, and you just have to walk for longer than the other person. So are you not focused on your performance, right? Every time you help somebody, it could kill you. I do see that part of it. I also see the part of it where in order to make it into the last, like into the last few standing, you probably can't do it alone. Somebody needs to help you along the way. And in order to do that, you have to help somebody else as well. And then towards the end, like whoever has the most endurance will be the last, regardless, right? So it really comes down to how you, I think, approach the story. Because thematically, there are definitely ideas in here like camaraderie and desperation and solidarity, right? Where the boys very quickly develop solidarity with each other, and the decent people very quickly fight each other and elbow out the nasty people. Barkovich is one of those, right? He's the guy who antagonizes the one guy to take a swing at him, and as a result, the guy falls behind and gets shot. Everybody hates him from that point on, and he has a miserable time, right? And he does not, like, he does make it into the last 8 or so, but like generally the people who help each other are the ones who go furthest, and the people who are openly hostile to everybody else are the ones who die first. So I think it works mostly on a thematic level. I do agree with you that it's a little bit of a hard sell, where I say like you are literally, like your entire future is on the line. Marathon runners don't behave like this, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everybody just runs their own run and they do the best they can and they've prepared for years. Like we're gonna bring up Hunger Games comparisons, but in Hunger Games, you have people volunteering who have been training since like age 5 for this, right? So they're in peak physical performance and have been training for over a decade. They've been preparing for this, and they've had the best food, the best medicine, the best trainers, and that maximizes their chance. And there's nobody in this movie or in the story who is like this. It's implied that some people have practiced, But that kind of seems to be it. There does not seem to be an industry based around producing winning candidates. Because I imagine if you train somebody and then they win the long walk and you get like 1% of their income, you've got it made. If you do this 2 or 3 times in your career and you are well off, right? You know what I mean? Like it feels a bit like people should take this much more seriously. And everything is kind of like they're not picked at random, they're not conscripted, they volunteered for this. So why are they so casual about it? And not just friendly. I get the whole solidarity thing because the rifles are pointed at all of them, right? But it's more like the competitiveness should be much higher, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, by the way. I think there should have been more seriousness to the long walk. But I think the reason why they had that approach of the lack of seriousness is to convey that the contestants are just is the everyday man, is the average, you know what I'm saying, is the average man. So I think that's the reason why. But I do agree with what you're saying. It should have been, it should have been more serious. This is life or death. That's why I felt like the behavior was a bit dysfunctional towards certain people dying. I was like, this feels a bit weird. And like the way that kind of justified my feeling of, what I was seeing was, okay, maybe the reason why they're behaving this way is because this is not the first time that the long walk has happened. So they already know what they're getting themselves into. They've probably seen this happen because obviously with the kids, the way that the kids are just watching when the kids were on their back and they were watching the long walk. So that gave me the impression that, okay, people have seen what's going on. And I think they even said at a certain point it will be shown on TV or something like that. So yeah, I was like, okay, so they're already familiar with this. So of course they're going to lack empathy to an extent. There was some sadness when certain people died. However, it kind of felt like business is business. I understand someone died, it's sad, but let's get back to what we're doing, which is the right approach. So that's why I was like, okay, it makes sense why they're behaving this way, but it just still felt a bit weird. I was like, damn, this feels a bit weird. Like, number one, they're not really taking it seriously by how they're approaching this. Number two, some people are kind of like, they should have trained for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were surprised that one person, I think it was the comrade's son, they were surprised how physical fit he was. And I said, and one person even said, oh, that guy, I think they said something about he's going to win or something like that. I'm like, bro, shouldn't have you should be like that guy too. You should have trained like him too. Do you know what I'm saying? So, but that's why I said, I think they were just trying to convey, okay, this is the everyday man that's competing in this competition.
Yeah, and I think that is a little bit where the theme and the literal plot are a little bit at odds with each other. Because, like you say, like if it's average people, and this is about how the average person is being ground down by the system, by a brutal dictatorship, that's fine. But there are elements of the story that are kind of at odds with that. Like one of them is that they're all volunteers. I do not believe that just working on a farm or in a factory is a worse lot than a 98% chance of dying at the long walk. It's just, I did not quite believe it. And maybe if more characters had like stories where they said, look, I have a sick mother, and the only way I can afford the medicine is if I get the prize money. Like I cannot work in a factory and afford the chemo treatment or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? There are not many of them that have that kind of motivation. There are people who want to do it for their family or for their loved ones, but it's not like desperation. It's not really like they play up this whole thing about this is basically a permanent depression, and the civil war has ruined the country so much, and the government in charge is so focused on staying in control that there will never be improvement. There will never be a better time. There will never be a recovery, like economic recovery. There will never be better times, and so this is all we can do. Like one thing that I really noticed is that the main character has a chipped tooth. Do you notice this?
Yeah, I saw that. Wasn't that his actual teeth? That was like his actual teeth.
I have no idea if that's an effect or if that's just the actor. Yeah. But, like you don't see this in a lot of movies, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody is always perfect. Like I roll my eyes a little bit at this. Oh, you're like in your post-apocalyptic story, everybody has perfect teeth and whatever, right? Yeah, it's technically true, but also it's part of the movie magic that these people are nice to look at, right? So whether that's right or wrong, or whether the art would be stronger if this wasn't true or whatever, it's a separate story, but this is just how it is, right? I don't remember any other movie where I saw like a character with a chipped tooth. There was like the part where I said, okay, these are bad times. These people are not healthy. They're worse off than us. They're probably malnourished. They probably have like their infant mortality is probably through the roof. Like this is not a good time, right? And it's kind of funny that One Tooth conveys this, but it kind of does, right?
Yeah, no, and it's crazy that you said that because that was one of the first things that stood out to me, and I didn't know why at first. But like, obviously, now that you're saying every night, I was like, yeah, it does. It shows the situation because a lot of the times you are used to seeing people with perfect teeth, but that's that chip tooth fitting so well with the environment and the scenario that they were in. So you're very right. It's just the way that you're going in was so funny. It wasn't intentionally funny, but it was funny.
Yeah, it's like a small thing, right? But
Yeah,
it like
has
I
all
have
these
no idea
people.
if they added this or if he happened to have one and said, "Hey, can you fix this after the movie? This really works for us." I don't know what the story is, but it really works here, right? And like there's other things too, right? Like everything looks like it's the 1920s, right? Great Depression. Everybody's eating dust for dinner, and it's awful, right? If you've ever read anything about the Great Depression, it wasn't bad. It wasn't
Yeah,
just a bad time; it was bad. And this is right out of the like it's purposefully anachronistic. It's apparently supposed to be the 70s, and some of the technology is a little bit modern, and a lot of it is very old fashioned, but it looks like it's the 1920s, and people dress and look like they came right out of the 20s, and every town they go through looks like this anachronistic mess that says, no, this place has seen better times, and everything is run down and abandoned and rusty. The world building of this, I think, really works in the sense that it conveys this idea that there are no better times around the corner. There's not just a couple of people who have fallen on hard times or who have had bad luck or whatever. This is everybody. No matter where you go, this will, like, probably the only way you can have a decent life is if you work for the military. That's probably what it is. This is basically North Korea in many ways, right? But anyway, I think the set design and the costumes and just all the background of it really conveys this idea of this is bleak, this is bad, this will never get better, and it used to be better. And then you have dialogue from the major about things like we will be number one again, which is kind of an interesting thing because the post-apocalyptic genre is an American idea that is made by the most powerful and richest nation in the world at a time when it's the most powerful. I don't think America produced post-apocalyptic stories before World War II. If anybody knows a counterexample, let us know. But I'm sure this is like coping with the idea that they are at the top and it's not that great for many people. You know what I mean? Like it's this cognitive dissonance of you see problems around you, but you are number one. And it's not, you're not just being told this. In many ways, the US has been number one for the past 80 years in a number of various different metrics, right? I think many people are kind of uneasy about it, and so they tell a story about losing it. That is like a very American idea, but it's not often recognized that they used to be number one. In the Handmaid's Tale, it's a little bit like this, right? Where you have like, I've not seen the show, but I've read the book. And in the book, there are like Japanese tourists who come to kind of this, dystopian America, and they're like modern free people. And they take pictures of these quaint Americans who live like in the 19th century. And it's a really, like, coming from an American author, it's really biting. Here you have this line from the major saying, you have this American dictator acknowledge openly, we used to be number one, we are not, and we will be again, and do what I say and we will be number one again. That is not something you hear from many American politicians, and that is not something you hear from villains in post-apocalyptic stories or any character in post-apocalyptic stories. Usually the collapse is total. It is everywhere. Everywhere sucks. And America is not special in that sense. It is only set in America because it's an American story told for an American audience. But generally the entire world dies in post-apocalyptic stories. And here it's just America, because they had this devastating civil war that kind of ended with extreme poverty and a government that is all in on staying in power and preventing anybody else from challenging them. For the major to outright acknowledge this, like at least the part of we are not number one anymore and we used to be and we will be again, that is a really interesting thing to hear coming out of an American movie.
I know the motivation behind the long walk was to give hope to America's make America great again. But how was that going to be achieved? And I don't know if I think the major must have said something. He said something about what you're doing. He said something about what you're doing is going to give hope to the American people, or something along those lines.
He says at one point that after every long walk, there's a major productivity boost in the factories because people are inspired and they are in a good mood, and so they work harder. It's like a spectacle for the general public. So they're recording all of this, and there is a cheering crowd at the end when they get to the finish line, which is a bit confusing because I thought there wasn't supposed to be a finish line. Like, you never know how long the long walk takes. So why is there like a literal place that has like the crowd and the band and the fireworks? You know what I mean? It's a little bit weird, but it's recorded, it's televised, and it's like a major spectacle where everybody watches. And I guess it kind of, first of all, it's diversion. It's like watching somebody else suffer. And also it's aspirational because anybody can volunteer for the long walk and anybody can win. And so anybody can make it. It legitimizes kind of the system by showing that anybody can make it. And that kind of inspires people, and that causes them to work harder in their factory jobs. So I don't think it quite hangs together for me. Like, if it's for propaganda purposes, why is there not more spectacle about it? In the Hunger Games, again, we have this massive production, right, where the volunteers are really instrumentalized for propaganda purposes, and like they have to go through all these shows and like give these interviews and put on these pageants for the capital people, and there it's very clear what the social function of it is. Like, it's supposed to make all the districts complicit in the games, and it's supposed to show the capital people that all the districts are on board with it, because look at the show they're putting on for you and how proudly they represent their district and all of that, right? So one of the things that makes the Hunger Games work so well for me is that aspect of it really, really works. This is really thought through, and the different components of how the games work are very, very deliberately designed for this propaganda and psychological effect of legitimizing the system and making everybody complicit in the murder. That is why, that is why the Hunger Games exist, and that is why it works, both in universe and as a story, and as well as a world building exercise. That is something that is a little bit weak here, I thought, where maybe this is different in the book. So I actually did read up on like what book readers are saying, and we'll get to some, like, there's some juicy stuff here, but one of the big differences is that the crowd apparently is a character in the book, meaning there are crowds where, like, every time they go into a town, every time they enter a city, there's a crowd there, and the crowd is described apparently like as this amorphous entity. Like, there are not really people in the crowd is just a being, and the crowd wants the workers to suffer and wants them to die, it wants them to slip up, and it wants to witness their suffering. And then it wants to celebrate the winner and feel good about the winner. But until you get to that point, they want to derive kind of enjoyment out of watching somebody else be worse off than them. That's kind of the impression I get from reading people's accounts of what the book is like. And that is missing completely here, right? Like, every time we go into a town, there's like 2 people there. The most that happened is there was like this family that brought a picnic, right? At one town, like they had like set up this little picnic table, and they were eating like sandwiches, and they were watching these people, like the workers walk past. That was kind of like a social event for them. But everybody else is kind of just watching. There's no spectacle, there's no propaganda aspect to it. We don't see the government exploit it for propaganda or for entertainment purposes, or to manipulate people, or to make people, or to legitimize the system, or to make people buy into the system or forget the injustices. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's no story, like there's no narrative that the government seems to use. They just tell the workers how amazing they are and how proud they should be and all of that, right? But why are they not telling this to the crowd? And if they are telling it to the crowd, why don't we see it? There's an interesting choice. And I think it makes the story worse, because it's not clear to me, like, when governments do stuff like this, there's a reason for it, right? Like, it has to do with kind of their legitimacy and with kind of their social contract and with what the people believe the government should be doing, and the government hijacking that for its own purposes and benefit to kind of paper over their shortcomings and create a narrative that suits them and all of that, right? Like, there's historical precedent for stuff like this, and you can usually see why they're doing this. And here, I'm not entirely sure.
What I was gonna say, because at first I thought it was to reinforce how little and how bad the state of America was at the time. I think they portrayed the point that you made about them enjoying their suffering. I think they tried to attempt that with them looking, mainly with the kids. Because remember the scene where one of them was gonna die, and then the tall black guy told the kids, don't look away, don't watch this, you don't want to watch this, but they kept on watching. So I think that was their way, that was the film's way of showing that people actually do want to see this. So it kind of covers what the book was, what the book conveys as well, that the enjoyment of their suffering. So they're, even though people in the contestants are telling them don't look away, they're actually watching. So that tells me, oh crap, like they want to see this.
Kind of, right? Like they're curious, like especially the small children are curious, but it's more like I don't see people kind of celebrating it, right? They do in the end, but like throughout the walk, it's just notably absent. It's just in the wilderness, nobody's watching. Looks a bit like a punishment, like if these were prisoners and they were trying to rehabilitate themselves, right, or something like that, right? Then it would make sense that they're doing it in hiding. But like there's no big ceremony at the start, it just starts in the middle of nowhere.
Wasn't that a reinforcement in the point that you made before, which was a good point about how America isn't number one anymore, and it shows the state of what America's in.
Maybe, but then I would expect people to say, okay, we maybe not number one anymore, but you are even lower than us, kind of thing. This emotional catharsis of I may not do so well, but somebody else does worse. Like that's not in this either. But that is something that it could be, but it's not. Like this is supposed to celebrate the system. This is supposed to uplift people, and they say it does, right? But we don't really see it happening, and it's not really clear why it happens. So I think it really depends on how you approach this movie, because like on the level that we've been talking about like the in-universe justification, what is the government's strategy, why are they doing this, why are they pushing this so hard, why are they saying the things that they're saying, I think that has some question marks with it, where I say, okay, this does not quite sing to me. But then there's the thematic level of the experience of the walkers and the solidarity and their reasons for doing it, what they expect to do with the winnings, how they basically are kind of naive about it, and how this entire thing, like you can view this thing, like there are different ways to interpret this. One of them is it's a allegory for war, where you kind of sign up for it, not really knowing what to expect. You expect glory and adventure and excitement and prizes, and then it's just awful and horrific. And even if you win, like one of the big things that they talk about in this is how the long walk never ends. Like even if you're the last one standing, it will never be over. That's like it will always just continue, and that kind of has parallels with once you experience a war, many people never quite come home from it, right? Like even if they do come home, mentally they will never quite let go of that experience. Another interpretation is that this is just life, where you just keep going forever. There's no real purpose. You just do a little bit better than you did before, and you just hope to make it to the end. But there's not really a point to it, and there's not really a destination. You just keep going for as long as you can, and you hope it works out. That's kind of life. Along the way, you can develop goals and attitudes and solidarity with other people who are on the same journey and all of this, right? But you can't win at life in that sense, right? Because everybody ends up dead. And as an allegory for life, I think this is quite strong. And different people have kind of different attitudes to this and different strategies for making it to the end, and how they perceive it and how they relate to other people, whether they try to find strength and solidarity, or whether they want to gain an advantage from other people's weakness. Like these are all different approaches to life. And this is reflected in the long walk, right? And it's reflected in the participants. On that level, I think it works quite well, where you can absolutely see the allegory, you can see the emotional level of this is what it feels like to be a participant in the long walk. And I think those are two very different perspectives, and one works much better than the other.
I definitely agree with that. And just to kind of like add on to it, I'm adding on to it with a question. There was definitely an importance that was put onto how each contestant ended their race. I think with the black guy, one that was actually a highlight moment was for me was with the tall black guy, the much darker skinned one. He asked the two friends, forgot their names, but he asked them not to look back when they shoot him. So that's one way he wants to go out. And there's other people, they went out, other people went out different ways. Like, well, most of them was kind of like resistance in a way. But like I said, there was an importance on how they ended, how they wanted to end their own personal race. Well, yeah, what was your view on that? And especially with like how did it affect your view on the overall story as well?
That's the part that really ties into the Long Walk is Life interpretation. Because like you say, some people try to go out with dignity. Like the Native American guy would rather shoot himself while chanting something in his language rather than resist, like make this futile resistance, right? Like if he's going to go out true to himself. And then there's the guy you mentioned who said, just don't look at me. I want the last of me you see to be dignified. And then there's others who just panic. Then there's a guy who gets run over by a tank. There's another guy who literally dies because he has diarrhea, which is about as undignified as it gets. There's another one who tries to escape and he just gets shot. And there's another guy who develops, I think, pneumonia, and it's the first time in his life he's been sick, and it has to happen that day, and that is just bad luck. Like he might have won if it hadn't happened for that, right? He was the guy who had actually trained, if I remember correctly, and who had the best starting conditions, and he just got sick, and that was it. That was his life. And there are this is life, right? Like somebody can have every advantage, and then they get sick at 30 or 20, and it's just over. And they could have achieved so much, but they didn't. As an allegory for life, this really works, and I think the deaths span the entire range from principled and dignified on the one end to just pitiful and pathetic on the other, with everything in between. And then at the end, we have Garrity and McReese. They basically fight each other for the privilege of sacrificing themselves for the other guy. And that is kind of the ultimate nobility, right? Like this is the ultimate expression of solidarity and brotherhood and being a good person and being selfless and realizing you are so close to achieving your goal, but you would rather your friend who you've known for 3 days, like get the reward instead.
And one thing as well that I really liked that they added, which is, I also agree with that point as well. This was I would say Perfect was a really good allegory of life. I'm saying the long walk and life. One thing that they definitely played on, they didn't really go into it, which it might be a good reason why they didn't go into it, because I think it might have ended up turning generic and just kind of like far from the main point at hand of the film, which is obviously, like you said, the allegory of life. Was they were trying to cheat death. They weren't trying to cheat death, but they played with the idea of cheating death, where I forgot who suggested it, but someone said, what about if we all stop walking? Like someone suggested the idea, and then obviously someone then brought them back to reality and said, well, it's impossible, you can't do that. And it's like I said, it mirrors obviously what would happen if someone actually tried to cheat death. Like we've tried to do this in society. What I'm saying, can you kind of like, you can't cheat death. Death is inevitable. And so that's something which I enjoy, that little scene there, that moment there.
I was going to say it's not cheating death. It's boycotting the system.
Yeah.
Right? It's refusing to play by the system's rules, knowing they will kill you for it, but at least you didn't participate. That's what that is about. And then somebody points out, no, all it takes for that to fail is for one person to keep walking.
But couldn't you also say, because obviously, like you said, this movie is an allegory for life, but couldn't you also say it could be seen as them trying to cheat death as well? Because
maybe, like, I would see it as like you were dealt a hand and you have to kind of make the best of it, and you can just refuse. You can just opt out. You can just do nothing. You cannot play by society's rules. You cannot, like, knowing that you will get punished for it in whatever way. I don't think it's cheating death, right? Because it will end in their death. It ends in death no matter what, right? Even the winner probably is like, even if he survives, is not going to have a good life, right? He's probably going to live in a wrecked body, and who knows how long. Like, it's notable that there are no past winners. Like in Hunger Games, once again, past winners are trotted out to show how good this all is, and there are no past winners in the Long Walk. There's not like 20. There should be one per year, right? If this has been going on for 19 years since the Civil War, there should be 19 winners who are standing there telling people, you can do this too. I did it, you can do it too. not one of them shows up. It could be that part of winning is you have to show up to these propaganda shows for the rest of your life. And if you don't, you lose your prize. That could be part of the deal, but it's not. Like the winners are completely absent. So that's part of it. I do want to get into one thing, which is that they changed the ending in the book. I want to talk about whether it's a good ending. In the movie, Garrity has the dream of using his winnings to get close to the major, wish for a gun, and use the gun to shoot the major. Because that removes the dictator, and that kind of creates the chaos that maybe inspires people to rise up, right? And then McReese ends up winning, and he then, rather than doing what he wants to do with the winnings, uses Garrity's wish, and he ends up killing the major, and then just keeps walking. That's the ending in the movie. In the book, Garrity wins, but he's so far gone by the end that he doesn't realize he's won, and he just keeps going, and he actually sees somebody ahead of him and says, I have to keep going. There's like, I'm in second place. I have to keep going, but the long walk is over. Everybody else is dead. He's the only one, but he believes the walk is still going on. That's how that ends.
Okay.
Any thoughts on what's the better ending?
I think Garrity winning is the better option due to the events that we saw, how it played out, because now he's like mentally broken. And if he continued on walking, he's mentally broken. And that's how life can do that to you. You know what I'm saying? You can crack. So as well as the actual competition. So that would have made more sense. I get why they didn't want Garrity to win, because like, okay, he's the main character. So let's kind of like divert from, what everyone would think. But at the same time, people would still think too that the main character would have worked. Because I feel like we're at that stage now. Like either the main character's not going to win, or they're going to try and they'll do like a twist where, the second main character will end up being the main character then, or whatever. However, I still do think the ending in the book would have been better based on, you see, what we saw, because it would have been justified if he just continued on walking, because he bonded and he made friendships, and he ended up seeing those people that he cared about die. And there was moments where he was going to commit suicide himself, as in like, he was going to, like the moment where he ran to his mom and then, he completely forgot about the race. You know what I'm saying? So there was moments of madness that he portrayed. So that would have been another perfect moment of madness if he just continued on walking, not realizing what was going on, because he was just broken. He was broken by the system. He was broken by the competition. He was broken by life.
Yeah, that's kind of the book ending, right? Like that he wins, but he cannot enjoy it, and he cannot, like, it's not real for him because it has ground him down so much that he doesn't even understand it. That's what it sounds like. And I'm a little bit down on the movie ending because it feels a little bit convoluted, and I've not fully made up my mind about this, about McReese winning, but then using Garrity's prize, and then he just keeps going. And also kind of the crowd and everybody just disappears in the final shot, right? Like did you notice this? Like there's a cheering crowd, and after McReese shoots the major and just turns around and starts walking, the crowd disappears, and it's just him in the rain, in the dark. And the cheering disappears as well. At least that's how I remember it.
I don't think it's continued on walking, but it did go dark, and it did go silent. But I don't think he continued on walking. I think he just cut off.
He turns around and starts walking, and then it fades to black. Yeah. After he shoots the major.
Yeah, if he carried on walking, then that doesn't really make sense, because there's consequences to your action.
Yeah, I think the book ending is just cleaner, right? Like, I don't really care that Garrity winning is the obvious one. Yeah, he's the main character, he wins. Deal with it, right? Like, but it's like I think the irony or the depressing part is that he wins, but he doesn't, but it's destroyed him so much that he isn't even able to get his prize. Right? They would give him this prize, but he can't take it because he's so far gone that he's incapable of it. And so he's lost all of this. He's gone through all of these trials. He's made all these sacrifices, and then he can't even get the prize because it has destroyed him. That is real tragedy, and that just feels better. I don't know. It's like again, I've not read the book, right? But it's just based on how it's described, and like from the summary and all of that, just as an ending, it feels both cleaner and more impactful. Because here, like, I have to ask, okay, McReese was convinced that Garrity's prize was better, and so he took it. But then he basically continued Garrity's mission. And the reason he did that was because Garrity kind of, in the end, said, I'm blind, I can't see anymore. Because my body is so destroyed that I can't. It's kind of what happens in the book, right? That his body is so destroyed that he cannot get his prize. But here he tells McReese, and then McReese wins on his behalf, and then does what Garrity would have done. So it's all a bit convoluted. It's all a bit messy. And I don't think it's as poetic as the original ending.
Nah, I agree. They would have fitted so well with the film if it ended that way. I just think the reason why it's not even I think I know the reason why they didn't do that was because, like, to be fair, the film it was depressing. It was a hard watch, and I wasn't expecting it to be a hard watch at times. So it was a very sad film, and obviously we're just living in times where there has to be somewhat of a happy ending if it's not horror.
Yeah, I'm all for the bleak ending. Like, I want more movies with downer endings, just so they're less predictable and more creative. And like, I'm a big fan of endings. I think if you write a screenplay, you should start with the ending, so you know where you're going, right? But that's just me. And I think many movies kind of fall down on having endings that are not that amazing. And so here, it being so bleak and so hopeless is the point. Like, anything else would not make sense. And even the one we got in the movie is not actually a happy ending, right? It's still pretty damn bleak, but
it's an ending which the audience would be satisfied with, though. And I think audience would be satisfied with the other, how the book ended. However, I just think this one, it's more satisfying than the other ending, because this one is like, they want the comrade to die. And at least, even though our main character died, we're still going to fulfill his wish and give him what he wants, which would give the sensitive people what they want as well in the audience.
Yeah. Which is kind of this strange ending of just kill the bad guy. And apparently there's no number 2, number 3, number 4 in the hierarchy. Apparently everything will just be okay. But like if that's the ray of hope, that's what you have to believe, right? Like this all goes away if you kill the major. And that's kind of supported by the crowd fading away once the major is dead, right? When I don't think I like that. It is not always just one person. Like, it may be that there's no good number 2. And, dictatorships have a tendency to fall apart after their leader dies, because they tend to not prepare a successor, because that's a threat to the ruler and all of that, right? But just this idea, all you have to do is kill the one person in charge, and then it all goes away. That is not something that's satisfying or interesting or true to me. So I just think the book ending is much more interesting. One more thing I want to just briefly mention, I think there's much to discuss here, is like, I enjoyed the brutality. I read somewhere, like I read a comment somewhere that that person realized they'd never seen somebody shit before in a movie. Because you don't normally see it, right? And here it just happens, and here the camera just will not cut away. It will not spare you anything. It will, like, the entire ugliness and brutality and suffering is on full display. There's a few times where it happens kind of in the background, but even then it makes a point. And at one point a guy just gets his legs crushed under a tank. And even then, like, one thing I found really interesting is that when that guy does not immediately die, right? He still gets his 3 warnings after his legs are crushed. Did you notice this?
Yeah.
Right? They did not shoot him like it's a done deal, right? But they still give him his 3 warnings and his 30 seconds, and then they shoot him. That is how little they care about these people.
Yeah.
Like, you could say, well, he's dead no matter what, so let's put him out of his misery. No, he gets his 3 warnings, because that's what the rule book says. Also, like everything else, like, every death is just gritty and visceral, and it does not shy away. And I felt people flinch next to me in the cinema. I think there's a bunch of flaws, like in its world building or whatever, but it made people flinch. It made people uncomfortable, and that is something that I don't think many people expect from a movie these days. Like, everything is so sanitized and so sugar-coated and wrapped in bubble wrap that a movie actually making you uncomfortable and flinching and looking away is not something that happens very often, especially like even horror and all of that, right? Like, you very rarely see real like, this is not real violence, but this is like this is still exaggerated in terms of how bloody it is. But like, the ugliness of violence is on full display here. And not many movies do this, and I think this movie gets credit because not just for its own sake, but because it fits the movie, right? The movie would be much weaker if all of that, like if the camera cut away, and if it was all by implication. This kind of movie, this movie specifically, has to show it, and they did, and that makes it a better movie.
And I was gonna say it was good that they just kept the brutality of things because it brought it back, not back, but down to earth. Because even though it was a dystopian setting, and a lot of the times with dystopian movies, even though it might not be an environment where it's sci-fi, it still kind of feels sci-fi. And there are times where it doesn't feel real because we don't see the real things happening, such as the shitting scene or when what's his name? I forget his name, but when he needs to go pee, is out. He said, "Hi guys, be prepared." Or so he says, "Guys, I'm about to unload," and he just, you know what I'm saying, he's walking backwards and peeing. This is realistic. I mean, even though, like I said, even though it's dystopian and dystopian setting, it's unrealistic. Just scenes like that brought it back down to earth again, and I was like, "Oh my days, it's disgusting, but it was amazing to watch." I was like, I would do the same. I'm saying if I needed to go, and I think one guy there was a line which is hilarious, but it was so true. It was like something about shitting is not worth your life or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
just let it run. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I don't think so. Why would you do that too? But at the same time, if I was in that situation, I'm like, listen, if there's I don't know, there's something about me. If there's a chance where I could just quickly I need to do it because I would just feel uncomfortable walking, just walking in shitty trousers, and it just makes you ask questions like, would you do that? Like, and why? And it definitely evokes a lot of questions, which was
yeah.
good.
The movie could have easily skipped all of that. It's on point. It's what this movie should be doing. All right, shall we move on to last words?
I think I don't know why, but this film has made me want to go watch Hunger Games again. Hunger Games is in my top 3 in case no one knows. But yeah, this film, I'm seeing it more in the better light, if you ask me. All thanks to Daniel. Like I
You're
said,
welcome.
yeah, thank you. I like the movie. It was really good. Well, I said it was a nice watch, and it was a nice watch, and there were lots of moments which I really enjoyed. I didn't really go too much into what my issue was. It wasn't really big issues. It was just like moments of stupidity, I'd say, especially with the boy ending up, getting himself killed by just going after the guy that's just roasting his mom. But come on, but yeah, it's what it is. But besides that, I had a good time. I like these type of movies. Dystopia is one of my top genres. I'd say it's top 3 genres that I like watching. And this was it was a Stephen King's adaptation. A lot of Stephen King's adaptations aren't too great, so I'm glad that this one was. And I hope there's more stories that will be adapted that is actually done good. Not this time, but that's done as good as this one, Miss, etc., etc. So overall, I definitely recommend for you guys to go and watch this one. I'm gonna give this one a strong 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think this movie will stick with me for a while. I don't think I will watch it again because it's just that unpleasant. But it's just so good. Like, that is why it's so unpleasant. I like it when movies are intentional. I like it when movies do, like, realize what they need to do and then do it. And this movie absolutely does this. I think there's some gaps in the world building and character motivations and like a whole bunch of details that I think could have been better. And it sounds like a lot of that comes down to changes they made from the book, specifically how the rest of society sees the long walk. That is like a really big blind spot in this. Having said that, I cared for these characters. It's convinced me of the reality of its scenario. It made me care for them. It made me cringe when I was supposed to. It made me flinch. It knows what it's supposed to do, and it does it, and it does it well, and it achieves what it needs to. So for that reason, it's a 5 out of 7.
All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning into today's discussion. Sorry it didn't turn into a debate.
So if you liked our conversation, please tell a friend, because the algorithm will not do that for us. And if you thought our opinions were a bunch of nonsense, please tell an enemy.
All right, guys, you heard it here first, and we will see you next time. Au revoir.
Bye bye.